Hi, everybody. Today we have Carol Mulumba with us. She is a longtime CBR advocate and someone that we have a long history with. And it's been a few years since we've spoken to her, so I wanted to get her on an interview and kind of bring us up to speed on what she's been up to since the last time we talked. Carol, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Andrew. How are you?
I'm doing well too. It's been, I think, 3 years since we talked last. And for anybody who hasn't seen it, we've got a blog post that we did back then about Carol's progress and about some of her history with CBR, specifically her history with sickle cell anemia and using her brother's cord blood stem cells in a transplant. So before we get started, Carol, would you just mind bringing everybody up to speed on a bit about your story, who you are, and your experience with sickle cell?
Yeah, no problem. I'm Carol Mulumba. Um, I was born with sickle cell anemia, and just for anyone who doesn't know, sickle cell anemia is a blood disorder which causes your normal circle red blood cells to turn crescent shape. And this blocks up the blood vessel and it causes a whole lot of complications. But the main one is parts of your body can't get oxygen because your red blood cells carry oxygen. So I was born with that, and I did suffer frequent episodes or sickle cell crises, as that's what we call when a sickle cell patient is undergoing a severe pain episode. And that involved a lot of trips to the hospital as a child. So that was pretty unfortunate. I missed out on a lot. But when I was about 7 in 2008, I think it was 7, I got the chance to have a bone marrow transplant. And what happened was my brother, who was 5 at the time, I believe, they drilled into his bone, I think his femur, to get his bone marrow. And they gave that to me, and now I'm cured. But as far as cord blood goes, they did use that as well. What happened was when my brother was born several years ago, they banked his cord blood, so just the blood in the umbilical cord. And I ended up using that after a bit, around the same time I had my bone marrow transplant. And the purpose of that, correct me if I'm wrong though, was to replenish the cells that I had lost and just kind of help me since in undergoing a bone marrow transplant, I did undergo chemotherapy, and that involved the destruction of my immune system cells, my platelet cells, so many important cells. It was a bit so having that boost is super helpful. So that's where my association with CBR comes in. But ever since then, I've been sickle cell free. Only time I've been sick was just because of the common cold and everything. And as of now, we'll probably talk about this more, but just a quick thing. As of now, I'm now a junior, God, in college. I just finished finals yesterday, so I'm officially a junior, and it hasn't hit me yet. And thank you. And I study at the thank you. I study at the University of California, Los Angeles, or just UCLA for short. And I study microbiology. That is a quick introduction on me.
So maybe that's a good transition to talk about some of the treatment and the recovery process, because one thing that was really interesting to me reading the book was how after your transplant, what the recovery process was like. And it's especially relevant now in times of COVID, because I'm assuming because you had to social distance and wear a mask and you were really careful with your immune system.
The main thing I'd say is it's very long. It's very long and it's very tedious, but I get it. Now I get it, because it's well, my body has to adjust everything. They have to make sure nothing's rejected. They can't just, give me the thing and be you're done, get out of here, because something might happen. So I get now, but at the time I was God, I'm so annoyed. I'm over this. But it was, like I said, very long. It was also very careful. Like you mentioned, I was still in the hospital. So after it was the transplant, and I was still in the hospital for 3 to 4 weeks, I believe. And nothing much changed at that point. I still, in the hospital already, there was a sink outside my door. So you had to wash your hands when you got in, because I already was immunocompromised. I couldn't really, I think the day of the transplant was the first time I saw my brother and sister since I'd left, because beforehand, children carry germs all the time, so I couldn't see them. So I did do quarantine before it was cool, and Still not that fun, but it started off really like extreme and like we got to be really careful, and then just a slow gradual decrease of all of these like visits and limitations until I was like, I think she's good enough. But that's a long-winded like response on how my recovery was.
Why don't we go ahead and talk about your book, because I read it this week and it was really interesting. And can you just give me some background on, well, first tell people what the title is, where they can get it, and is there going to be another book?
I think it's on Amazon, most definitely. And that title is like something like I'm a sickle cell survivor. I'm on the front page. It was my prom picture, actually. That's on the front page. And as far as another book goes, I don't know specifically, but as far as the book's origins, my mom encouraged me to write it. She was like, I think it'd be a pretty interesting project. The gist of the book is actually just me talking about my early childhood up to a little bit after the transplant recovery. But that's where I have more detail on a lot of things, like how my childhood was like in Texas. That's where I grew up mainly-ish. I was a military child, so I moved on. But Texas is where like the main stuff happens, and just how I dealt with sickle cell as a student or just a child. Excuse me, and how that affected my schooling, my family life, and the transplant and the lead up to the transplant, day of transplant, after transplant, all of that stuff. But that's basically the gist of my book.
Just to wrap up a little bit, is there any message about sickle cell or cord blood stem cells, newborn stem cells that you want to leave to people? Is there anything you want to, if you could impart one thing to people about your experience or the science, what would you impart to them?
I think definitely bank your cord blood. I think you never know when you're going to need it. My parents didn't know that I'd get a transplant when they banked her brother's cord blood. They were just told you should bank it, and they were like, okay. And here I am. I think it's really cool to say, yeah, I got saved by cord blood that was frozen for like 7+ years or whatever. So I think do it. We're kind of in the future. It's really interesting to see how science in general and medicine has progressed. The fact that we can freeze blood and it's used later on, I think that's really cool. So definitely bank it. And then as far as trying to remember your question, sorry. As far as like my other messages, just in general to people suffering with diseases and everything, I feel for you. Absolutely. I understand where you're coming from. Absolutely. It is a challenging thing to suffer from a disease. Absolutely challenging. And you may not feel like it, but you're absolutely so strong. Like, oh my God. Like, I understand that life in general can be hard, but life with a disease and you're still waking up every day, like, congrats. Honestly, you're amazing. And I know, days maybe, really bleak and everything like that, but I truly believe that you will be better. And in general, you'll be strong. Every single day you're very strong. So do not forget that. Just and a note to everyone, really, just support each other, and be kind to one another. I know it ended cheesy, but yeah.
No, great message. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us, and really glad to hear that you're doing so well, and hope you can go back to school on campus and have more of the college experience.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.